We're going to continue this conversation. Professor Dirk Kotzé from the University of South Africa joins us to make sense of this developing story and a whole lot more. The battle line's been drawn. We've kind of seen what's coming up, the terms of reference being put forward here as well in this government gazette document. Did this happen in quick time, Professor?
It happened relatively quickly, but it's not exceptional. It is normally, I think, when the president decides to establish such a commission, they've done a lot of thinking before that already. In the case of the Zondo Commission, it took some time, but not so much. So it is very much in line with the establishment of it. It is also the terms of reference, the powers of the commission is in line with the Commission Act, which is one of the oldest commission acts of Parliament at the moment that's still in operation. And it also borrows from other commissions of inquiry, as well as the powers of the Portfolio Committee of Parliament. So there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of commonality between these different institutions that can use for similar purposes.
Yeah, and I read Section 13 about when the reports should be put forward then, but there's also Section 14 here, which then says each report must be submitted to the President and shall include recommendations that can be immediately actioned based on the Commission's work as at that date then. That's going to be very important as well. I mean, that doesn't differ, however, from the scope and objectives of previous commissions, does it?
It is very similar to that. I think what is in this case something relatively unique is that it says that they don't have to, by implication, wait for their reports in order to start with actions. In the terms of reference, it refers to the fact that if the Commission comes to a conclusion about, for example, that some persons must be prosecuted, that can happen immediately. They don't have to wait first for the 3 months or the 6 months in order to be reported to the president, and from there the action can take place. So that I think is a relatively unique power given to the commission, but I think it is very important that is possible, because the moment they come to a conclusion about some other part of their investigations and the evidence that have been presented to them, they can already formulate a recommendation, which is then forwarded to, let's say, for example, the WALKS or the NPA or any of these groups, criminal justice groups. So I think that is important. The same about how to, the evidence that's presented to them. This is not unique. It's very similar to that of a portfolio committee, for example. Was the same with the Zondo Commission. Is that it's not only evidence that's presented to them, but they can also summon witnesses to come to the commission in order to provide them with evidence, and will be under oath. So just we must remind ourselves of President Zuma, who refused to do that. He ended up in jail, and it was convicted. So the same will apply to this commission also. So if there's some persons that are supposed to appear before this commission, they refuse to do that, then that is a possible consequence of those actions.
Yeah, does that element then of not having to just wait for the reports, but ultimately if they find something that they believe is in contravention here, they can ultimately act on it. Does that build a bit of trust then from, yes, a South African standpoint, but also just based on the institutions of the country too?
Yes, I think that is so. And it is therefore also not dependent on, for example, that it is first accepted by President Ramaphosa, the total report or the complete report, but that once the commission is of the opinion that they have sufficient evidence about something, that they can take action, they can recommend action very quickly. So I think that is why I refer to it as something relatively unique. Most commissions haven't done that, and it all waited for the final report before there was a response from government or the cabinet in general, and then the slow follow-up to that started to happen. So I think the pressure on President Ramaphosa, the criticism about commissions of inquiry in general, possibly prompted him to take this or to include these provisions in the terms of reference.
Yeah, so Does that mean that also then as civil society, I mean, this is President Ramaphosa's 5th commission of inquiry. This doesn't go into all the other judicial questions that we've certainly been put forward and have seen as well. Should civil society put in more pressure? And if so, how can we do so to ensure that this happens speedily, but also happens correctly and quickly? Because that would obviously then regain the trust of all South Africans.
Yes, I think civil society will play a very important role, and especially you, the media. I suspect that most of the hearings will be in public. The terms of reference does provide that when there's evidence which is of a national state security nature, classified information, for example, then there can be closed sessions. But I would think that the majority of sessions will be public in nature, and that it will be broadcast by the media. So that immediately brings it very close to all of us, and we will become, in a sense, co-responsible or witnesses of what is happening there. And I think that is where civil society can play a watchdog role, because it's not necessary to go and investigate and do research about what happened behind the scenes, but it is in full view of all of us.
Yeah. Professor, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you then just about, of course, the release of the latest progress report on the State Capture Commission of Inquiry as well, and those recommendations. Then 48% of the matters that were put as the 60 actions identified by Ramaphosa in 2022 by the president in that response plan then are on track or have been concluded, while 23% are on track. Is that a suitable measure? Does that spark any confidence in you?
Well, I think I personally would like to see that there's more results. I think that the public in general feel even maybe more stronger than me, that we need to see tangible results, that it affects persons. Although, I mean, quite a number. Take, for example, almost the entire top structure of Transnet has been taken to court, but now it is in limbo. It is not really some progress being made with that. So, and in essence, a lot of steps have been taken, but the concrete results of those steps are not yet also so visible. There's some recommendations that's not about persons or about prosecutions, but it's more about structural, institutional reforms that must take place. And I think in that area, that's one aspect where there's even less progress than when it comes to the prosecutorial aspects of it, and following up on the conclusions of the commission. So in that sense, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Some of it is, I think, is something which one cannot act on. It's more about coming to conclusions about what was the effect of state capture in general. And I tend to latch onto that by saying what we are seeing now currently with the police and the possibility of the infiltration by criminal syndicates, that is in itself a form of state capture at a very early stage. So I think the two becomes, in a sense, linked. And it is very important that there's a very strong connection about how to prevent another form of state capture developing. And in that case, the recommendations of the Zondo Commission are important, as well as to come to speedy conclusions about the current situation also with respect to the police specifically.
Yeah. Professor Kotzé, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for that. Then we certainly will be seeing things as they progress. Then starting off today, of course, with that press briefing around 4 p.m. then is when we anticipate that to happen. We believe we'll be talking to you a lot more then from here on as well regarding that as well. So Professor Dirk Kotzé there, the Professor for Political Sciences at the University of South Africa.